Hey, what's up guys? My name is Naam. So in today's video will be your weekly stimulus check update, second stimulus check update, and also your stimulus package updates for the week of May 16th. So in today's episode, I'm going to talk about stimulus checks, a recent proposal for the $5,000 check, and also most recently, the $3 trillion HEROES Act. So let's start with stimulus checks. So the IRS, they reported they nearly sent out 140 million stimulus payments so far. There are roughly around 140 million people who are eligible for stimulus checks, so there are roughly around 40 million people who are left. So for individuals who make between $30,000 and $40,000 a year, the IRS should have already started to send out these checks. For individuals who are making between $40,000 and $50,000, you should be getting your checks sent out by the end of next week. So for Social Security recipients, they should have started seeing their stimulus payments made via direct deposit or direct express. If you're an SSI recipient who received their monthly payments via check, the IRS has stated that they will start to send out these checks on May 15th. So be on the lookout for next week for these checks if you're one of these recipients. So for eligible veterans, according to Direct Express, eligible veterans should be expecting their stimulus checks around mid-May. So hopefully by now you may have received your money. If not, hopefully you receive it next week. The IRS did also update their FAQ section concerning stimulus checks. So if you're an individual who's wondering if you can get your economic impact payment sent to a prepaid debit card, the IRS says maybe. So to make this happen, you gotta double check with your card's financial institution to see if this card can be reused, and you have to be able to obtain the routing number and the account number. And whenever you do give the IRS this information, when you file your taxes, you should indicate that this is a checking account, unless your financial institution labeled it as something different otherwise. Honestly, I feel like it's such a headache just to do this. The IRS also said that for parents who do share a child and are not married, but they each received a $500 check, they would not have to return that money. Like me, honestly, I feel like this is such a messy situation to try to get one parent to pay the $500 back. The IRS did say that it's unnecessary for either parent to return the payment, but they did also say that the parents should keep the Notice 1444, which is the letter that you got after the IRS sent you the check for 2020 tax purposes. Well, that's pretty good news. And also, if you believe that your economic impact payment amount is incorrect, all you can really do right now is just wait to claim the additional amount when you file your 2020 tax returns. So now let's talk about some updates for unemployment. Within the last week, there's been another 3 million Americans who filed for unemployment. That's not that much of a change compared to the previous week, where it was around 3 million as well. So as of right now, there are roughly around 36 million unemployed individuals. So again, just to put this into perspective, the Great Depression had an unemployment rate at around 25% in 1933. The US currently has around 15 to 16% unemployment rate. So depending on how the economy and businesses begin to open within the next couple of months, it will really determine whether this number will creep up or slow down. The chair of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, he stated that among the people who are working in February, almost 40% of those households making less than $40,000 a year have lost their jobs in March. He also did say that long stretches of unemployment can damage and end workers' careers as their skills begin to lose value, their networks begin to dry up, and leaves their family in greater debt. He also did state that he supports additional fiscal support because it's well worth it to help avoid long-term economic damage and leaves us with a stronger recovery. He was also concerned about a domino effect, where it will be a cycle where consumers lose jobs and cut spending. So when people cut their spending, this will cause more restaurants, gyms, and businesses to close. So it will hurt even more jobs. So what he explained here was just the basic gears of an economy. If you guys have some time or interested in learning more about economics, Ray Dalio made a great video explaining how the economy works. And given the current economic state, I think it will be very interesting for you guys. So I'll post a link for the video if you guys want to check it out. So now let's talk about the world of proposals. Recently, there was a $5,000 stimulus check proposal. I'm gonna say that this was hardly a proposal and more like an opinion, and it wasn't that good. So this so-called plan was called the Eagles Plan. So instead of being a non-refundable stimulus tax credit, this will be a voluntary loan that could be worth up to $5,000. But here's the catch. It will be in exchange for retirement benefits via your Social Security. They say that your Social Security benefits can be delayed for around 3 months. So far, if you do decide to get the check right now, delaying your Social Security for an extra 3 months doesn't sound that bad of an idea. But it did also specify that the balance that you would owe to the United States would be a specified and favorable government interest rate that would last until you decide to collect your Social Security benefits. This is where they had me lost. A favorable government interest rate. To be completely honest, I really don't know what is a favorable interest rate. So let's take a look at the 30-year Treasury bond. Their yield is at 1.29%. Also keep in mind that inflation is roughly around 2 to 3% a year. To have a favorable government loan, it probably has to be more than 3%. So let's say for instance, it's 4%. So let's say for example, you're 32 years old and you're set to retire at 62. So you're also going to be collecting Social Security. So that $5,000 loan that you're going to take out right now is going to cost you around $17,540 in the future. Of course, this doesn't account for inflation, but let's just say the inflation rate is going to be around 3% a year for the next 30 years or so. So technically, your interest rate is going to be around 1%. So the future value of your loan in today's dollars will be around $6,800. But just a reminder, this is only if the interest rate is only 4%. Unfortunately, in this opinion piece in a news article, it didn't really specify what is a favorable interest rate. The average Social Security benefit is roughly around $1,500 a month. So if the inflation rate does stay around 3% a year and the interest rate for the stimulus check would be around 4%, it will technically take around 4 months to pay off this debt. Like, I kind of get what the people were trying to do with this proposal. They were trying to appeal more towards Republicans because they don't want to add more to the US national debt. But I feel like there could be much better ways to do this. Again, this is just my opinion. Maybe it's a stupid idea. Since the money is going to be coming from the IRS anyways, why not have individuals who get yearly tax returns deduct that amount from the amount that they owe until the debt is paid off? Of course, this is not going to apply to everyone because some people may owe taxes on a yearly basis, or sometimes they don't have any tax returns. But since most employees do pay federal taxes automatically from their paychecks, it's not like they're going to be seeing this money in their pockets on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. The IRS is already taking this money. But again, this is just my idea. It's probably stupid. I'm not a politician. So now let's talk about the $3 trillion proposed bill that's called the HEROES Act. The likelihood of this actually passing is very low just due to the fact that the bill does not address anything that the Republicans want. Surprisingly, the president does want to see a second round of stimulus, but he does want to make sure that workers and businesses are being taken care of. Sometimes I just don't understand why these proposals are just so one-sided, because for anything to work out, both sides have to be happy. I do get that people do need more stimulus checks, but there has to be some sort of negotiation to work something out to make sure they're working towards a common goal instead of just a one-sided one. But anyways, let's talk about what's inside this proposed bill. This is a doozy of a proposal because it's about 1,800 pages. Who has time to read 1,800 pages in a couple of days and vote on it? It's like having a class project where everybody reads 100 pages and summarize their dots. It never goes well. So let's get into the juicy part. This is what the majority of people want to know. Will they get a second round of stimulus checks? So inside this proposed bill, it would provide for more checks. $12,000 will be going to eligible adults that are making less than $75,000, and it will begin to phase out until you make $99,000 a year, until essentially you get nothing. And $2,400 for married couples who are making less than $150,000, and their check will begin to phase out until they make a maximum of $198,000. Probably the biggest changes with the stimulus check proposal is that dependents can also receive a $1,200 check, which is limited up to 3 dependents. So the proposed bill would also allow for retroactive payments for dependents who did not receive the first $500, and on top of that, they would also receive that extra $1,200 this time around. There was also another change for who would receive stimulus checks. So previously, you had to have a social security number to receive a payment. Like for people who are married and filed jointly and their spouse did not have a social security number, they would not be eligible. So inside this proposed bill, it stated that anybody with a taxpayer identification number would be eligible. So anyone who has an I-10 can receive a stimulus check. But let me just make one thing clear, is that someone who has an I-10 does not make them an illegal immigrant. There are plenty of people who own businesses in America that are foreign nationals, people here on work visas, or student visas that can acquire I-10s so they can pay taxes. So now let's talk about student loans. The HEROES Act will give student loan forgiveness for federal loans and private loans. So this bill will give you $10,000 in student loan forgiveness. So this is something that you probably might have heard of a couple months ago, which is called the HEROES Fund. So this was also basically injected inside of this proposal. So for eligible frontline workers, they will receive an additional $13 an hour. But this will only be limited up to $10,000, and that's only if you make under $200,000 annually. So if you do make more than this amount, you can receive a maximum of $5,000, and it will be retroactive back to January 27th. So now let's talk about renters. Inside this proposed bill, landlords cannot evict their tenants for at least 12 months if they did not make any payments. Also, the landlords would have to give an additional 30-day notice for tenants to vacate the property. So essentially, tenants can get up to at least 13 months rent-free if they decide not to pay. In addition, the Democrats do want to extend a $600 a week unemployment benefits until January of 2021. As of right now, with the most recent CARES Act, the unemployment benefits are set to expire on July 31st. Well, this is not actually unheard of. There are countries in Europe who do have extended unemployment. So for instance, in Germany, they will give you up to 67%, up to a maximum amount of around 6,700 euros, which equals to about $7,300. And these are set to continue until the end of this year. Here are some other things that are less known that are hidden inside of this stimulus package. They did put in a provision in there that would require mandatory masks on the Amtrak. Even though the CDC does recommend individuals to wear face masks and practice social distancing, It's really hard to get the rest of the country to listen for some reason. There was also a provision for the marijuana industry. This would allow for these businesses to work with federally backed banks and insurers. If strip clubs can get PPP loans and federal grants, why not pot dispensaries? Alright, so moving on. This proposal would include a ban on utility companies from cutting off water and electricity during the crisis. Under the legislation, state and utility companies receiving federal help would be required to maintain water and electricity services through the duration of this pandemic, even though the tenants may not be able to pay their bills. So this is pretty much what I wanted to cover from this proposed bill. Since it is 1,800 pages, there is so much information in there. But this is what will mostly affect most Americans on an individual level. The truth of the reality is that people need help right now, and times like this is not regular times. It doesn't matter your stance amongst the national debt, unemployment, or people receiving government money. When the US decides to bail out major corporations, people get mad. And when the government decides to bail out the people still get mad. We live in such strange times. The fact is that we never had a high unemployment rate like this since the Great Depression. Even during the financial crisis of 2008, the unemployment rate was around 10%. Right now it's roughly around 15%. As much as many people complain about the state of the national debt, and while we're adding more to it, they had no problem previously when it was at $15 trillion or $20 trillion. Nobody was talking about a national debt when our economy was booming the last 10 years. But all of a sudden, when everything goes crashing down, people are worrying about adding more to the debt. I don't know, this is just my 2 cents. It's just me venting. Alright guys, so that pretty much does it for me. Subscribe if you don't want to miss out on any future stimulus videos. If you want to hang out with me some more, check out my videos over here.